Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Police announced that more charges will be laid against a Lethbridge gymnastics instructor as more alleged sexual assault victims have come forward. Police in Calgary make a couple of massive drug busts as more than $3 million worth of meth and fentanyl are confiscated. And the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is blasting the Liberals over the amount of federal employees who received a number of pay raises during the pandemic.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. A Lethbridge gymnastics coach who was previously charged by police with sexually assaulting a 7-year-old girl now faces even more charges. 33-year-old Jamie Ellicott, who was a former owner of the Lethbridge Gymnastics Academy, faces 3 additional charges of sexual assault stemming from alleged incidents involving girls aged 10, 12, and 14 in May of this year. Ellicott was arrested on Wednesday but was released from custody and is scheduled to appear in court on August the 31st. Concerned parent Mallory Christiansen says she and a group of about 10 parents who've had their kids enrolled at the academy and don't feel comfortable with the idea of having their kids there are having a tough time getting their money back.
We obviously understand that COVID has severely impacted local businesses, and that's why many of us wanted to support Lethbridge Gymnastics Academy. But child abuse, sexual assault allegations are far more serious, and they're going to continue to lose business. And we as parents deserve a refund. Guardians, kinship providers, all of us who have put our children in this academy for trusted purposes deserve a refund.
The Lethbridge Gymnastics Academy posted on Facebook that they were aware of the charges against Ellicott and that Andrea Surwright has been the sole owner of the academy since July 29th. The company did not respond to BCN's request for comment on the sexual assault allegations and the refund request made by parents. Police in Calgary seized close to $3 million in 2 recent drug busts. Investigators with Alert's organized crime team say most of the illegal substances included methamphetamine and fentanyl. 2 loaded firearms and a Nissan SUV were also confiscated. 5 people from Calgary were arrested as part of Operation Crucible and Operation Cairo. They face a wide range of drug charges and weapons-related offenses. The over 40,000 grams of methamphetamine seized is one of Alert's biggest drug busts involving meth to date. The Alberta NDP say that the Status of Women Minister Jackie Armstrong-Homeniuk and Secretary to the Ministry of the Status for Women Jackie Lovely need to resign. It stems from the essay contest in which Armstrong-Homeniuk awarded 3rd place to an entry which encouraged women to stay home and have babies instead of pursuing a career outside of the home. The NDP's Children's Services critic says both women need to resign not only because of the essay contest, but because they have not been transparent or accountable to Albertans.
They have both displayed a horrendous lack of good judgment and an inability to take seriously the work required to advance and promote interests of women in this province. After dragging this out for days, we now know who the UCP made these decisions, but we still do not know why. And let's be clear, there are only 2 possible explanations for why. First, the Associate Minister and Parliamentary Secretary for the Status of Women were too lazy and distracted to read a 500-word essay themselves, and the UCP have created a culture where political staff believed endorsing an essay that is misogynistic and racist would please their bosses. Or the second option is that the Associate Minister and Parliamentary Secretary read the essay in question and chose it because they endorsed the views that it contained.
Status of Women Minister Jackie Armstrong-Homeniuk has already apologized for awarding the controversial essay 3rd place in the writing contest. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is calling on Ottawa to implement a sunshine list as thousands of federal bureaucrats are now receiving over $100,000 a year in salary. Now, to discuss this in more detail is the federal director of the CTF, Franco Terrazzano, who joins us from Ottawa. Franco, how many federal employees are we talking about now receiving a 6-figure income than prior to the pandemic?
So we dug up documents that show that more than 114,000 federal government employees received more than $100,000 in 2021. And that means that there were 45,000 more federal government bureaucrats receiving a 6-figure salary last year than there were before the pandemic, and how this is just more proof that we are not all in this together. And what we have seen is a tale of two pandemics, one full of private sector pain with pay cuts, job losses, even business losses, and the other full of economic gain for government bureaucrats and politicians.
Now, there were also a number of federal bureaucrats who received more than one pay raise during the pandemic.
This must really feel like a slap in the face to the many private sector taxpayers who struggled through the pandemic to know that they have a higher tax burden to fund government pay raises. Now, we also found that more than 300,000 federal government employees received at least one pay raise during the pandemic and lockdowns. There were no pay cuts in the federal government, but that also is just the tip of the iceberg, because members of parliament, they gave themselves 3 pay raises during the pandemic. And we also have to look at the crown corporations. The Bank of Canada gave itself $45 million in pay raises and bonuses during the pandemic as inflation took off. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation gave itself nearly $60 million in bonuses and pay raises during the pandemic. And the CBC, they also gave themselves $51 million in bonuses and pay raises during the pandemic and lockdowns in 2020 and 2021.
Thanks so much, Franco. That was Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, joining us from Ottawa. Well, it was another sweltering hot day here in Lethbridge as we hit over 30 degrees once again. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, did we get close to setting a heat record?
Yeah, well, I'd say we hit well over 30 degrees, coming in at 34 with the humidex at 36. But believe it or not, still not quite hot enough to break that record. The record on this day was set back in 1996. It was 36.8 degrees. But that does not take away from the fact that it's still very hot here, still under those heat warnings. So please do heed those warnings and try to keep as cool as possible, because it's going to be a very hot one this week. I'll have all the rest of the weather details coming up for you later on in the show.
Yeah, keep cool. Thanks so much, Jeanette. The city is asking us to have a good, long, hard look at trees in our yards. Now, this is the time of year when Dutch elm disease rears its ugly head. It's a nasty fungal disease that specifically attacks elm trees. Experts say it can be very harmful and can cause the tree to completely collapse.
If you've got one of these in your backyard and all of a sudden it gets something like Dutch elm disease, you could lose your tree. And that's why we're asking people, watch for signs, symptoms. There's multiple invasive species that we watch for in southern Alberta that could potentially come in. Firewood is a huge issue, and it's camping season. Never bring firewood back to Lethbridge with you.
Signs of Dutch elm disease include yellow droopy leaves, leaves that fall off too soon, and branches on the stem of the tree that turn brown. Farming Smarter is hosting their annual Open Farm Days event this weekend. It's an opportunity for people to learn all about where food comes from. An official with Farming Smarter says they hope guests will learn lots about the industry when they attend the event.
To have an idea of the science and the knowledge and the education that these people have that are able to be in this industry is extensive. And so we want people to recognize, that it's not the, picturesque farmer with his pitchfork and the wheat straw hanging out and the coveralls. Like, that's not the picture of today's farmer, right? They are very, very smart business people, and they run big operations. Typically, they're still family farms for the most part, but they're just larger than they ever have been in the past. And there's lots of technologies.
Now, the event is free and runs Saturday from 11 till 3 at the Farming Smarter Farm. A popular tourist attraction is open once again. The Lethbridge Corn Maze has opened both the corn and sunflower mazes for families to enjoy until October. Both the corn and sunflowers are still growing, but the owner says the mazes are ready for people to get lost in, and so far, they've been getting some pretty good feedback.
The tourist attraction has been going on for 23 years. When we started out, we had no clue what was going to happen. And over the years, we really have been growing, but we also have see this happening. People are coming, they're enjoying the place. So we try to make it enjoyable for whoever comes. So it's a great family outing, and we get lots of positive comments.
Another popular attraction of the maze is the goat snuggling sessions. Those will be coming to an end at the end of the year. Now, Slingerland says all of the money from the sessions will be donated to the Lethbridge Food Bank. They're hoping to raise around $1,000. Thanks to a student from the University of Lethbridge, a new exhibit highlighting the history of Lethbridge media has been unveiled. Cass Williamson helped create the exhibit that features the history of early newspapers in our city to the eventual leap to television. One of the more interesting pieces on display is a handmade radio transmitter.
So that's like a really unique thing to see, because you can really see that like handmade quality of it. Like a lot of technological equipment that we use today is off the shelf, is very slick. So to see stuff that's really kind of not rudimentary, but like you can tell that someone put a lot of love and care into building it. Objects like that, I think, really have a unique character that's pretty cool.
I think I remember using that earlier in my radio career. The exhibit will be on permanent display in the Discovery Hall at the Galt Museum and Archives. Fans of soccer in our city are set for a very special treat this weekend. The Lethbridge Soccer Association is hosting the Tier 2 Alberta Youth Outdoor Soccer Provincials. There will be 47 teams competing with players ranging in age from 13 to 17. Players from across the province will be taking part, including 5 teams here in Lethbridge.
Locals can see like what Edmonton and Calgary and like Fort McMurray they're doing and stuff, and so it kind of brings parents together. They can talk about programs with each other, and then the local community can see quite a high quality of soccer being played. It's going to be a good time and a hot time. So there's going to be I think a lot of water breaks happening, and hopefully everything and everybody stays cool.
The first game will take place on Friday at 3 p.m. and the tournament will wrap up on Sunday. BC wildfire officials say a lightning storm rolling over Vancouver Island was responsible for sparking up to 9 fires burning in the area. All of the fires centered around the Barkley Sound area, with blazes reported near the communities of Port Alberni, Ucluelet, and Banfield. Fire officials say it's possible some of the fires are being reported more than once, given their close proximity. All of the fires reported in the island were similar in size to about an acre as of Wednesday afternoon. The crash of a snowbird's jet in Fort St. John, BC last week grounded the entire demonstration team. A statement from the Air Force says the fleet will not fly until an airworthiness risk assessment can be completed. One of the planes made a hard landing at the Fort St. John airport, and the team's appearance at the Abbotsford Air Show was later canceled. The Air Force says the assessment will include a broad risk analysis to ensure the squad can safely return to the air. Toronto police say a power outage affected the city's downtown core earlier today. Hydro One says it is still investigating. Many office buildings in Toronto's financial district and Toronto Metropolitan University's campus lost power. Many traffic lights were also out. Police say the cause of the outage was not yet known. Hydro One, meanwhile, says the outage is related to the transmission system and more updates will be made available very soon. A relationship between a father and a daughter is very important. Dr. Meg Meeker wrote a book on the subject called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. Now, the book has been so popular that PureFlix is turning it into a movie. Dr. Meeker says when it comes to the daddy-daughter relationship, affirmation is key.
A father needs to affirm his daughter. You don't want to tell her she's a great soccer player if she's terrible, but you want to affirm to her that she is a wonderful girl or woman to him, and that she's given gifts in her, that God gave her gifts that she needs to use in order to give her life purpose and meaning. And a father wants to help her find out what those gifts are.
Make sure you catch the full interview with pediatrician Dr. Meg Meeker and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our show. Well, it was almost hot enough to cook an egg on the sidewalk today. Those hot temperatures will be sticking around here in southwestern Alberta. Complete weather details are coming up. The heat warning from Environment Canada continued for Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a look at all of the weather details. Jeanette, the 30-plus degree days will be sticking around for quite some time here in southwestern Alberta.
Well, certainly for the next week, they will be, Hal. And, for the first time this summer, today, I jumped in my car this afternoon and I burnt myself on my hot leather seat. So first time this summer, but, that's just one of the hazards of summer. As we look into tomorrow, Friday, we are seeing that high of 32 degrees. Humidex sitting at 36, but Look at this. We're looking at a 30% chance of showers tomorrow with the risk of a thunderstorm. Overnight, we're seeing those temperatures remain in the teens, so not cooling down all that much, although we're looking at a 60% chance of showers on Friday evening. Into a Saturday, that is going to decrease to 30% chance of showers. High of 31, though, so still remaining very warm. 28 the high on Sunday. Monday's high 30, 32 Tuesday, and up to 33 on Wednesday under sunny skies. So brace yourself. It's going to remain hot for a while. Average high for this time of year 26, average low 11, 37. That was our high temperature on this day back in 1996. It actually came in at 36.8. The low on this day was 0. It was back in 2007. And our sunrise this morning was 6:16 a.m. and our sunset this evening 8:57 p.m., giving us 14 hours and 41 minutes of daylight. So days are definitely getting shorter. So let's take a look at the highs. Across the nation, starting on the west coast, Victoria sitting at 23 tomorrow, mainly sunny skies, a bit cooler by the water, windy in the Juan de Fuca Strait. Vancouver, mainly sunny, fogged in some low-lying areas, 27 the high in both Edmonton and Calgary tomorrow. Calgary under a severe thunderstorm watch this evening, but by tomorrow it should clear away for mainly sunny skies. 27 the high tomorrow in Saskatoon, 31 in Regina under mainly sunny skies and a high humidex as well. We're looking at humidex coming in at 36. 26 the high tomorrow in Winnipeg, looking at a 30% chance of showers too and a risk of a thunderstorm tomorrow. I know it didn't say that on the graphic, but last time I checked, we're looking at a chance of rain there. 25 the high in Toronto, 23 in Ottawa, all same thing for Montreal, 23 the high, starting with sunny skies and progressively getting cloudier by the afternoon in those three cities. 22 the high tomorrow in Fredericton with a chance of showers. 27 in Halifax, 23 the high in Charlottetown tomorrow, looking at some fog dissipating there, and 18 the high in St. John's, Newfoundland, looking at a chance of drizzle and showers. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Financial services company Desjardins says the average home price in Canada will drop by close to 25% by the end of 2023 from the peak it reached back in February of this year. The new outlook for the residential real estate market expects a sharp correction and adjusts their previous prediction of a 15% drop. Desjardins says the lower prices are due to weaker housing data and more aggressive monetary policy than previously anticipated. The Bank of Canada raised its key interest rate by a full percentage point in July, pushing up the borrowing rates linked to mortgages. Further rate hikes are expected later this year. One of Regina area's biggest employers could be sold. Evraz plc, the parent company of Evraz Steel, says it is seeking proposals for the possible sale of its North American subsidiaries. More than 1,000 employees work at the Regina steelmaker and its smaller Evraz operations in Alberta. Last March, Ottawa slapped sanctions on a Russian oligarch who is a major shareholder in Evraz over the invasion of Ukraine. Ottawa's recommendation that farmers in Canada cut fertilizer use by 30% is not sitting well with many in our rural communities. Stuart Bovey, who is a dairy farmer and chair of Alberta Milk, says if producers cut their fertilizer consumption by that much, the price of milk will be going up.
It's really handy to go after fertilizer, and they're actually going after fertilizer emissions, which are not even measured, right? And say, well, we're going to cut fertilizer use by 30%. Well, as a farmer, that's a unique challenge, but I'll tell you right now, that will increase prices. The reason fertilizer gets used is it's an efficient way to grow more feed per acre. That's what it is. So if you say you want to use less, that's fine. But then the cost per acre goes up, which translates right into a higher cost of milk in my industry.
Stuart Bovey, the chair of Alberta Milk, will talk more about the state of Canada's dairy industry coming up after business news. Cineplex has recorded its strongest quarter since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. The movie theater company says it recorded a net income of $1.3 million. A year ago, the company suffered a loss of $140 million. Cineplex says theater attendance in the quarter hit 11 million. That compares with just 1 million in the same quarter last year when it was still facing pandemic-related restrictions. Top Gun, Doctor Strange, and Jurassic World Dominion were the top films for the quarter. And I've seen 2 out of 3 of them. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 105 points on the day to finish at 19,991. The Dow was up 27 points to 33,336. The S&P 500 was down 2 points to 4207, and the Nasdaq was down 74 points on the day to 12,779. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 207 to $94 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 52 cents to $8.73 US. Gold was down 7 cents to $17.8964 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at $20.31 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $10.75 per bushel, barley's at $7.81, canola's at $19.55, and corn is at $10.87 per bushel. Live cattle were up $1.40 to $140.60. Feeder cattle were down 73 cents to $179.95, and lean hogs were up 15 cents to $122.40. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 78.34 US. Recapping one of our top stories, a Lethbridge gymnastics coach previously charged with sexually assaulting a 7-year-old girl is now facing even more charges. Police say the 33-year-old Jamie Ellicott faces new charges of sexual assault and sexual interference involving girls aged 10, 12, and 14. The 3 girls were allegedly assaulted during sessions at the gym in May of this year. Ellicott was arrested and then released. He will appear in court on August the 31st. A book which discusses the relationship between fathers and daughters is being made into a movie on PureFlix. Coming up, BCN's Jeanette Rocher chats with the author of the book, Dr. Meg Meeker. And listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Whoop Up Days are back as we celebrate 125 years. Beginning August 23rd, take in the parade through downtown Lethbridge, and then at Exhibition Park, enjoy a full 5 days of your favorite sights, sounds, smells, and tastes. Besides an amazing assortment of rides on the Midway, this year's fair will feature a brand new La Gallery Art Showcase, an outdoor beach party, a mini carnival for the kids, and a Southern Alberta culinary experience like no other. So much more to see and do. For more information, visit whoopupdays.ca. Go back in time and see what it was like to live as a pioneer. Coyote Flats Pioneer Village is a Western heritage museum located 1.5 kilometers south of Pitcher Butte. Walk through the village and see a railway station, post office, fire hall, school, and so much more. This museum is open daily from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. with admission of $10 for adults or $20 per family. For more information, visit coyoteflats.org. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Well, parenting is one tough job, and both mother and father have important roles to play in the lives of their children. Well, today we want to take a closer look at the interesting dynamic of father-daughter relationships. Our guest pediatrician, Dr. Meg Meeker, has written a best-selling book on this topic, and it's now been turned into a movie. Let's take a look at a clip from Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters.
With 3 daughters, this is wisdom, my friend. Read carefully.
Looks like it's been through battle.
Consider it a field manual.
Zozo Partey, the Todd Bob? Get your hands off my daughter.
Hey, bro.
Get in the car, now.
No, no, no. I hate you!
I'm really tired of feeling like the bad guy here.
You still don't get it!
I took my eye off the ball. I'm gonna get better at how I show them.
Daughters are gifts to guide, love, teach. But they're not for us to keep.
Loving you changed me. Loving you saved me.
At some point, you realize your daughter's taking her last ride on your shoulders. I'm learning to let go of my plans and start trusting God with His.
We'd like to welcome Dr. Meg Meeker to Bridge City News now. It's so great to have you with us, Dr. Meeker. Thanks for joining.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So can you first of all maybe give us a brief overview of the themes in the book and the movie?
Sure. I wrote the book because as a pediatrician, I saw in my practice that the kids, the girls who had issues and illnesses, got recovered much more quickly when they had fathers involved. So I wrote the book to really elevate fathers and say, we need to teach our fathers how to engage more. And it just hit. And so a number of years ago, then PureFlix bought the rights to the movie, and they developed a storyline, which is fabulous, about a father who has three daughters, and he encounters some issues with these daughters because he's not really understanding who they are, and he learns to understand them as the movie goes along.
I'm sure any father of daughters would probably relate to what you just said, not really understanding what's going on in these girls, especially during that adolescence time. It's interesting that you said, as a pediatrician, you saw that girls were healing faster. Are you talking any kind of healing, like physical or mental illness? Like, what were you looking at there?
Usually mental illness. But a lot of mental illness is associated with physical sensations and physical feelings. For instance, a depressed daughter with some anxiety may develop an eating disorder, which of course lasts for a long time. There can be other problems associated with depression, anxiety, drinking, taking drugs. And I found that, the daughters whose fathers would come in for a visit periodically or just involved in their lives got better so much faster. But at the same time, our culture was maligning fathers and putting them down and saying, kids don't need a dad. They just need their mother. And I was experiencing the exact opposite in my practice. So I did the research and I said, no, 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 no. We need our dads.
That's amazing. Why do you think that role of fatherhood is so important to, I guess, not just girls, but every child?
It really is. From a kid's perspective, they perceive their fathers very differently than they perceive their mothers. Now, parents don't want to hear that, but my job is to speak for kids. And what I found is that fathers have a different type of authority than a mother does in their lives. For instance, and it's not better or worse, kids feel their mothers have to say nice things. They have to encourage them. They have to tell them that they're really good at soccer. And to go, well, that's just my mom. But when a father says that, it means something very different in the child's life. And so fathers' words and opinions and feelings carry a different weight to a child than a mother's do.
That's fascinating. Do you think that kids look up to their dads differently than they do their mothers then? I know what you're saying there, because it's almost like they're more to the point, I guess, more.
There is. The mother in the first 10 years of a daughter or a son's life is the one who teaches them an emotional vocabulary. She's the one that says, it's okay to cry when you come home from second grade and you're not feeling good. Dads, on the other hand, might say to their son, oh, come on, buck up, you're fine. Just simple things like that. So mothers are the ones who emotionally engage more. And I found that they emotionally engage daughters more, not because fathers don't want to, but fathers don't know how to handle their daughters. They're intimidated. They think, I don't get her. She doesn't talk like I do. She talks way too much, or she wants to do different things. So they tend to withdraw from their daughters, and that hurts daughters.
Okay, so what advice would you be giving to parents who want to communicate more during those distant years?
What I would say to a father, during the pre-pubertal and pubertal years is your daughter's going to communicate to you that you're dorky, if people use that word anymore, and I don't want anything to do with you. But that's not how she really feels about you. That's how she feels about herself. So fathers during those difficult years need to engage their daughters more, not less. Now that feels counterintuitive to them. And by that, I mean, ask her to go on errands with you. Ask her if she wants to have breakfast with you on a Saturday morning. Ask her how life is at the end of the night when she's getting ready to go to bed. In other words, just move in and try to talk to her. Let her know that you still love her, that you want to affirm her, and that she's still really great in your eyes. that makes a world of difference to how a daughter turns out in her later teen years.
So true. So, what about single dads or those who may have been separated from their kids and maybe not always by choice?
Right, exactly. What I have found is that in many states, fathers who are divorced will remain close to their kids for the first few years, but after 5 or 10 years, they kind of give up because they think, you know what, my kid doesn't want to be with me. Maybe mom doesn't like me and is teaching my kid, my daughter, son, that I'm a terrible person. So they tend to pull back. So don't do that if you're divorced. Stay with that child. If you're a single fathers can be amazing. As a matter of fact, some of them will emotionally connect better with their kids, their daughters, than their mothers will. And I have seen that over and over. So I would tell a single father, don't try to be two people. You can't be dad and mom. You can be a great dad. Find a woman that you know, that you trust, like your mother, a grandmother, an aunt, that you can expose your daughter to, who can see, how does a good woman look like? How does a good woman live? What does she say? How does she dress? How does she treat other people? And also that your daughter can see how you interact with that other woman, so she can learn what to expect as she becomes a woman with an older man.
I feel like we've been having this same conversation for years, but about women, the single moms, and raising boys, and try to find that positive male role model. I mean, it works just the same in reverse, doesn't it?
Exactly. And kids need to, particularly daughters, need to attach to fathers, just like they need to attach to mothers. We talk about the importance of attachment early in life and then later on in life. And we tend to focus on attachment to mothers, but kids need strong attachment to their dads, particularly daughters, in order to get a fuller sense of who they are as a girl and then a woman, and what to expect when it comes to how to be treated by boys and men in their lives.
Are girls more impacted by not having a father figure in their life than boys are? I know you hear it said that it can affect them really, like later on in their dating lives and their marriages.
Absolutely. Every child has a part of their heart they want their dad to fill. And every daughter wants that desperately. And that's why this whole, thinking and teaching that dads aren't important is devastating to daughters. A son, on the other hand, has that same need for attachment to dad, but he needs affirmation of himself as a man, that he can be a good man. And that's what a father needs to bring to a son. He needs to teach his daughter, yes, she's great at different things. She can excel in different things, but he doesn't need to affirm her womanhood like he needs to affirm a son's manhood in order to transition into a healthy adult.
Wow. Is it ever too late for a father to maybe mend a broken relationship with his kids or with his, I know we're talking about daughters here specifically.
No. Fathers ask me that a lot and they give up. A father may be 50 and he has a daughter who's 25 and he said, it's too late. I said, it isn't. And here's why. Because every daughter is connected to her father. He was her first introduction to male love, to male trust and everything. So she wants to reconnect. She has an ache in her heart to know her dad. But dads need to know that, and they need to initiate reconciliation, because a daughter still feels at 25 that her dad is the one he's the grown up, even though she's a grown up, but she wants her dad to make those first overtures. It's never too late. And it really, short of just a few awful violations that a father may make against a daughter, it almost doesn't matter what the father's done. A daughter is the most forgiving woman a father will ever know, because she needs him. His wife doesn't really need him. His mother doesn't need him. A teacher doesn't need, but his daughter wants him and needs him. So once dads recognize those feelings are still in her heart, And if he just taps into those, she will come around, but it can take months or even years. But be patient.
I can really connect with what you're saying, because I just reconnected with my dad, I want to say 5 years ago, after 35 years. So yeah, I can completely relate to that. So what encouragement would you give to dads and moms who are currently raising kids? It's the hardest job on earth. Let's face it.
Yeah, it is the hardest job and the most important job you'll ever do. I would encourage fathers and mothers to focus on the big things. Don't focus on all the small things that are making you so uptight and so anxious. What sports your child plays, how he's doing in school, this kind of a thing, but focus on, first of all, make sure you're giving your child affection, particularly dads to their daughters. Mothers tend to give it to their sons and daughters. Dads tend to pull back. So, a hug, a pat on the head, a kiss on the cheek, just randomly. And that is huge for a daughter. Make sure you're giving her enough attention. Intentionally set aside 10, 15 minutes a week just to do something one-on-one. Take her to the park, take her to the library. If you're going to do errands, take her with you. Or if she's a teenager, ask her what she likes to do and say, well, I don't know anything about that, but I'd like to go with you. And then finally, a father needs to affirm his daughter. You don't want to tell her she's a great soccer player if she's terrible, but you want to affirm to her that she is a wonderful girl or woman to him, and that she's given gifts in her, that God gave her gifts that she needs to use in order to give her life purpose and meaning. And a father wants to help her find out what those gifts are. And they may not be physical gifts. They may be things like empathy or patience or courage. And so to affirm character qualities in their daughters is very, very important, particularly for a father in his daughter.
So, Dr. Meeker, why do you think that your movie, your book, really, it's called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, why do you think that resonated with so many people? Did you initially think it would ever become a movie?
No. Actually, I wasn't even sure I was going to write the book. It came about because my publisher and I had her husband stayed home with her 3 daughters, and she was a breadwinner. And my husband had stayed home with my 3 daughters, and our daughters had wonderful relationships with their fathers. So we came up with the idea of a book because we really wanted to affirm who fathers are in their daughters' lives. And we never had the belief or the expectation it was going to hit a nerve in men. And I think it did so well and is doing so well because it tells fathers who they are through their daughters' eyes. And I think that when you teach a father how his daughter sees him, it's transformational. Dads go, are you kidding? I never knew she wanted me that much and she loved me that much. I had no clue. And so then the Pureflix bought the movie rights to the book. And that was a number of years ago. And I thought, well, we'll see. And then they brought the movie out. And I was so excited because it's a fabulous movie. It's very uplifting. It's very pro-dad. And that's what we need right now in America, is something that encourages fathers.
Absolutely. What do you hope people will take away from Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, the book and the movie? I mean, encouragement for one thing.
My hope is that fathers will, one, learn that they're much more important than they believe they are, and that they will learn how to engage. They'll learn how to, really move forward and engage their daughters in a very simple but effective way. And I know they can do that. So the movie should inspire them. And then the book and something else I have online called the Masterclass teaches them how to do it. And it's not that hard. And I try to take that intimidation factor out for fathers. And I think, we're pretty successful at doing that.
Amazing. I can't wait to see the whole movie there. Looks like we are out of time, but thanks so much for being with us today, Dr. Meeker. We really appreciated having you on.
Thank you.
Well, here in southern Alberta, agriculture is the order of the day and naturally impacts every family in the region. Dairy farming is lesser known and talked about than some more visible ag sectors, but we wanted to check in with a local dairy farmer who's also the chair of Alberta Milk, Stuart Boovy. Thanks so much for joining us today from Barnwell, Alberta, all the way out in Barnwell.
Good morning.
Great to have you on. Okay, so Stuart, we hear a lot about ranching and feedlots around here, of course. So in your mind, what sets dairy farms apart from cattle operations?
Well, generally a different breed, first of all. It tends to be Holstein. There is also Jerseys and other breeds in southern Alberta, but it tends to be Holstein. So that would be one thing. The other one is, there are lesser numbers, I would say. There's about 150 dairies in southern Alberta, 490 in all of Alberta. So that, like you say, a little bit lesser on public perception-wise, I suppose. But I guess that would, and we're definitely a different industry as far as genetics and livestock.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so would you say that there's a need for more dairy farms in Canada?
Not more dairy farms, I would say. No. Production is, before COVID was always going up. The last 2 years it's leveled off, just because of consumer demand and consumer issues. So right now, milk production in Canada is basically, it's growing at about 1% to 2% per year. That's what it averages.
Wow. Okay. So at the very basics, what does Alberta Milk do and who does it serve?
So Alberta Milk is a producer driven industry. So I've been a producer my entire life. I've been in this current location for 27 years. So the board of directors is made up of all producers. You have to be a producer to be on the board. Alberta Milk, what it does, it does many things. One of it is it's actually it coordinates milk receiving, milk quality, transporting milk to producers, raw milk to processors, I should say. Takes care of on-farm animal care. It does many, many things, but all, it's a producer-run organization.
Wow. Okay. So the dairy farming in southern Alberta, would you say that it's more of a multi-generational family business, or are they owned by large corporations? What are we looking at here?
It very much tends to be multi-generational, stay in the family type business. That's certainly my roots. My father started in the 1960s in BC. That's very, very typical. Some of the farms, I know there's one west of Lethbridge, has been over 100 years in business. It really tends to stay in the family just because it really affects your life, I guess is what I would say. It's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. If you're not born into it, you'd probably look and go, why would I want a dairy farm? But if you're born into it, it has a different draw to you, I guess, is what it is. And then, of course, in southern Alberta, we also have the Hutterites that quite a few of them have dairies as well, which is obviously multi-generational and doesn't move, obviously. So
Definitely. So are you then moving your milk into other organizations that maybe then produce cheese, or is that all one and the same of the dairy industry?
So currently in Western Canada, we don't have a large cooperative. So what Alberta Milk does is coordinates milk transport to processors. So in Canada, there's 3 major processors, and then there's a myriad of smaller ones and some on-farm processing and other things. But the 3 major ones take about 75 to 80% of the milk produced in Canada, and that's also in Alberta. Currently in Alberta, we're a little bit short of processing. So sometimes some of our milk goes east or west, depending on the day and the week. And we coordinate with other milk boards in Western Canada to take that milk. That's obviously, we work very well with our other Western milk boards, and we work nationally as well. But certainly on milk processing, we work as a Western group, the 4 Western provinces. So what we do is about a month to two, well, hopefully a month in advance, we have all the loads of milk destined for their processor. There's processor orders, and then we fill them. So that's how dairying works. So we, as producers, we do not process our own milk. We sell it to processors.
Okay, there you go. You answered my question. I was always kind of curious about that. Now, in this industry, you hear of something called the quota system. So maybe explain why this is important to dairy farming families and Canadian consumers, and maybe also how the quota system works.
So it's fascinating that how you asked the question. Actually, dairying around the world is on a quota system. Actually, if you really get down to it, here the reason it gets named differently in Canada is it was put in place in the 1960s, and it's actually run by the CDC, the Canadian Dairy Commission. So it's actually federal, and that's what differentiates us from other countries in the world. Most dairy systems, I would say, in the world now are run by the processor. That the processor wants so much milk, and they contract, which is the same as quota. It's just a different name. But anyways, going back to Canada, quota is just a producer can buy from another producer a market share is what it is. So that's actually the whole name. It's market share quota. And what you do is if say like my own farm, I have a quota that's basically through Alberta Milk, and I have a certain deliverable amount of milk that I'm allowed to produce in a day. And that's transferred farmer to farmer. And that's what they call the quota. Now, what Alberta Milk does is if I would want to sell my quota, I would put it on the market and another producer could buy it. The only thing fascinating about quota is that the provincial boards actually control it. So if the market gets bigger, like I mentioned to you before, if it gets 2% bigger, then there's 2% more quota that can go into the system. That is not sold. That's distributed amongst producers, or we start new producers. So that's how that all works, and that's all mandated to the provincial boards, and that's one of the things that the provincial board does do.
Wow.
Is we have a general manager and staff that deal with producer issues on that level. But that's all mandated through federal legislation, and that's why sometimes we're targeted because it's a federal thing, and there's long-standing agreements, interprovincially and things like that.
Lots of red tape, I'm sure.
Yeah. Which we're very much working on, trying to eliminate some of the red tape, just because it becomes onerous. So
a little bit cumbersome, I would imagine.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But it's fascinating that in other jurisdictions and other countries, it's very similar. It just doesn't have it doesn't have the same reputation for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but anyway.
Interesting. Okay, well, you mentioned other countries. So there has been talk of countries like the US and New Zealand wanting to get their products into our markets. But is this a good idea for Canadians?
Well, COVID taught us a few things. One is supply chains. So the downside with milk is if you want to move it long distances, it becomes really tough to do because milk is a perishable product. So it becomes very, very tricky to move milk long distances. That's why in Canada, milk is produced in all 10 provinces, just because it seems like a great idea when things are going well, but when you get a supply chain problem, which COVID did, and other things can bring it on, weather, anything. So bringing from other countries, while it seems like a good idea, is much more difficult than it actually seems.
Yeah, I can't imagine any benefit to having dairy products come in from New Zealand or someplace else when they can be produced right here at home.
For sure. And what it is we've mentioned a little bit about the Canadian Dairy Commission. It gets targeted because we have pricing set nationally, and the U.S. targets that because our return comes only from the marketplace. So I only make money from what the consumers pay. Other jurisdictions tend to have all sorts of programs which are not from the price of milk, but they have other programs that get money into the hands of producers, and that's where it gets murky and it gets tricky, and why you get trade deals and trade negotiations that, while we can produce milk cheaper, well, where are you making your money? Is based, I guess. When you get into the details, then it gets very complicated.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, we've heard too that U.S. lobbyists are proposing that Canadians would pay less for their dairy products, but is that just their way to lobby to open up a new market?
Absolutely. It's absolutely what it is. Because what happens is, and we've just seen it even in COVID, I mean, I'm sure you're aware in the Fraser Valley, also they were shorted with milk just because the farms were flooded, and we had, you know, and then there was COVID issues on trying to haul milk interprovincially. Well, they tried to get milk out of the U.S. It was 50% higher than the Canadian price.
Okay.
So it's just fascinating that they want to open the market up, and then once you've eliminated Canadian dairies, your milk price would be actually much higher.
Oh, wow. You know, I'm just curious too, how different is the U.S. dairy product to what's produced in Canada? Is there a difference?
Well, they have some different rules that they adhere to. Something on quality, they are allowed to have somewhat poorer quality. I wouldn't say it is poor, but they're allowed to. So there's that difference. Our regulations are much tighter, which I'm very much in favor of. Even as a producer, I think we need to make sure that our quality is of the highest standard, rather than even mediocre. I want to use the right word. I wouldn't, not high quality, I guess.
Of course. So what makes the Canadian product more high quality then?
We have regulations as far as bacteria levels and stuff like that in the raw milk that are more strict than other jurisdictions. Okay. Even though I would say the majority of the milk is nowhere near limits, like the high limit, it's still allowed. So that's one difference. The other one is they are allowed to use growth hormone in the U.S. that we're not allowed to use in Canada. So that's an animal that's been restricted for probably 20 years already, and at least 20, close to 25, I guess, in Canada. It is illegal to use in Canada. So we're not allowed to use it on our dairy animals. So that's another difference.
And when it comes to feed for your dairy cattle, how much of an impact does the type of feed have on maybe taste of the product? I know with eggs, like in the US, you'll see the yolks are more yellow than in Canada. They're almost an orangey color, and it's because they're corn-fed compared to wheat-fed. Is there anything similar with cattle and with milk, with dairy
well,
cows?
It certainly can be affected. I know, like I said, I have a long history in the dairy industry. I know my parents, they would feed, waste like cauliflower or things like that, and you will taste that right away. But now, because of just the size of farms, we tend to grow our own feed, or certainly some of it. So most cows are fed a pretty similar ration, I would say, as far as, in southern Alberta, I feed a falfa. In, say, British Columbia, where I'm originally from, they feed grass just because of the climate. But then most cows, most dairy animals in Canada, I would say, get silage, corn as well. So that really makes the milk taste pretty much the same.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Well, and again, back to our processing end, obviously we have to work with our industry stakeholders, with our processors. And of course, they like the same across Canada if they could get it, right? So I would say you would have to be a pretty picky dairy eater to notice the difference on milk taste across Canada. I'm not saying that, maybe there's places in the world that it would taste different, but I'd say in Canada, it pretty much tastes the same.
Okay. So the feds right now are proposing fertilizer restrictions. Would this affect dairy farming at all?
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
And how?
Yeah. This might be a long answer, so but
brace myself.
Brace yourself, yeah. It's really handy to go after fertilizer, and they're actually going after fertilizer emissions, which are not even measured, right? And say, well, we're going to cut fertilizer use by 30%. Well, as a farmer, that's a unique challenge, but I'll tell you right now, that will increase prices. The reason fertilizer gets used is it's an efficient way to grow more feed per acre. That's what it is. So if you say you want to use less, that's fine. But then the cost per acre goes up. which translates right into a higher cost of milk in my industry.
Okay, and then the consumer will probably feel that in the end.
For sure.
Oh, right when inflation is hitting us all too.
Well, and the problem with, and I understand, you know, I've personally had meetings with the federal environment minister, who is certainly, you know, very much in favor of restricting fertilizer use or whatever. But the problem is that they go by world numbers and by about emissions, which is a dangerous game to play. Because I would agree that we should limit fertilizer emissions. Doesn't mean you have to limit fertilizer use. You just got to make sure it all gets used properly, which is, you know, easy to say and a little bit more difficult to do. While you need farmers involved is really what, I mean, that's what I do. That's my whole career, is trying to make, okay, you want us to use less fertilizer and emit less, we'll figure out a way to do it. Don't worry, because, you know, fertilizer is expensive.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for that insight. Really appreciate it. It looks like we are about out of time, but we really appreciated having you on today, Stuart.
Anytime.
Absolutely. That was Stuart Booby, the chair of Alberta Milk. I'm Jeanette Roche. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.